Hey everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to our channel Paws On Animation and our Paws On Manga segment.
In today's podcast, we're covering the Assassination Classroom Manga.
Now, in the past, we've covered both seasons of the original anime and the first live-action movie, so now it's time to review the book series that started it all.
Before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, and keep us some future podcasts and one pause videos.
Yes, and for those of you not familiar with Assassination Classroom, it's an action sci-fi comedy manga written by Yusei Matsui and published by Shueisha. It originally ran from July of 2012 to March of 2016 with a total number of volumes of 21.
Yes, and it actually took us a very long time to get to this because we did not actually have access to getting this manga at first. We only watched the anime because it was recommended to us several times. Mm-hmm. And then later on, we kind of wonder how the manga was. And originally, these books weren't available because they were beginning to be banned from the libraries due to the assassination part of the title. And they were using the guns to target Koro Sensei. And this was considered really triggering, so they took it out of the libraries thinking it was a problem.
And they also claimed it had sexually explicit imagery, which we didn't see, and a sexualization of minors, which neither did we see either.
No, really no. So eventually we found a library that did have the books in there still and didn't ban them, so we started getting 3 or 4 books at a time to read the entire series, and there are 21 volumes there.
And it is a fantastic read. If you've seen the anime and you think this is great, I hope the manga is just as good. Well, it actually is. The anime is nearly practically one-to-one for the manga.
Right.
Now, there are some events that are left out that I guess they thought would be superfluous.
Probably.
And really, it was not a bad idea to leave them out of the anime because it still flowed, but being able to read those extra scenes and events that were taken out makes the manga an even more enjoyable read.
Yes, very. And one thing that was funny for us that we kept hearing the character voices from the anime in our heads as we were reading it.
True.
And the sound effects and the music, so it was like you were just seeing it in an animatic form, and it's hilarious. And as you're reading it, there's also one thing Mama had pointed out when we were like halfway through, is that the narrative in the anime is really focused through Nagisa being the narrator and telling the viewer about the situation, the deadline, and what their job is at the classroom. In the manga, you get the same thing, but Nagisa technically wasn't the one narrating. It was just a narrator, the author, telling you. And it was a mixture of the students together getting the screen time, not just Nagisa.
True. And that made a difference in reading the manga. Because when you're reading it, it's like, oh, wait a minute. Oh.
Right.
And you had mentioned you thought maybe it was a better choice for the anime, so people could focus.
Yeah.
And they had that narration going on. But
yeah,
I do like the feel of the manga just as well. I didn't feel cheated, and I didn't feel like, they shouldn't have done that. When I read the manga, I'm just as entertained, and it really flows. And it was just a decision that was made. Now, a lot of times we'll see decisions made to change the flow or the focus of a story in an anime, and you're disappointed and bothered and upset, but that doesn't happen here.
Right.
Both ways the story flows, and it's fantastic.
Right.
And for those of you who aren't familiar with the story, it's talking about the daily life of an octopus character working in high school as a homeroom teacher, and his students are dedicated to the task of assassinating him before March of the next year.
Yes.
Because the moon is already being blown up, and they think he's going to blow up the rest of the moon.
Yeah, and the world on top of it. Yeah. So they have to take him out before that deadline, so they've been training to do that.
And this class is known as 3E, which is not something good in this story. They're supposed to be the worst of the worst of the worst. They consider them dumb and unteachable and a lost cause. They're even not in the same school building as the other students. they're off on another part of the campus in another building by themselves, and no one has any hopes for them whatsoever.
Right, they're just kind of waiting for them to get expelled.
And that's what makes this story fantastic, because he comes in and you find out why when you read the manga and watch the anime. And he dedicates himself to really believing in them and encouraging them and mentoring them and motivating them.
Yes.
And making sure that their education is so excellent that they excel everything far beyond any of the other so-called normal gifted students.
Right. And what you love about that is underneath all the craziness of the story, because yes, it's just as crazy as the anime.
And fun.
And Crossings being a little pervy and all their insanity and dealing with the villains and the
there was the
temps.
part, but they weren't sexualizing students. He was the teacher and he was a perv. So
that was it. And then the one he was in love with that you found in the backstory, she was as crazy as him, just on a different level, so it was mutual. It was fine. So with this, there's actually a pretty good development and story underneath all of the humor and the fun and the perviness and everything. It's all part of it. And by the end, both when you're reading it and you're watching, if you know how the story ends, you know what's coming. If you haven't, what's bizarre is that you are sad to see it end. You almost don't want it to end the way it ends, because you've enjoyed these characters and you see them grow throughout the story. And Mama actually pointed out and said, I think the real reason they want these books in the library is because the students were improving and getting better. The teacher was doing everything he could for them. They were becoming better people, better citizens, better assassins, better everything. Literally everything he could make them better at, he did by the end of the story.
So it made it look like, again, the regular teachers didn't care as much as he did and weren't as invested in making sure that they could go out and be better, as you said, members of society. Now, we forgot to mention, aren't they in junior high?
Either junior or senior, because they mention them graduating. They at the end of the series, they're supposed to graduate from the school or get expelled if they fail both the mission and the class.
Yes, they were junior high.
Well, okay, that's
so they were graduating from junior high to go to high school.
Right,
and then
that's
later
what was
on
great.
You find out what each of them did after high school finished.
Right.
But they make you get so invested in the story, and they make you love Koro Sensei. The writer, the mangaka, is brilliant because you end up loving the character that's supposed to be the villain of the story.
Yes.
You end up loving this Class 3E that was supposed to be the derelicts and the lost causes.
Right.
And you end up cheering for him and them. And as you mentioned, you're hoping the story turns out different at the end. They tell you right in the beginning how the story is going to end. And you're hoping the story doesn't end this way. And you even have the students several volumes before the end trying to have a different outcome for the story.
Yeah.
And you find out that it could end differently, but the Japanese and world government are choosing for it not to end differently. And that's also another message in this story.
Yes.
And it was another reason why they probably don't like it. Because the children found a way for this to end differently, doing research and so many things in their own. And the threat of Koro Sensei was reduced to 1%. And they're saying, okay, well, you don't have to take him out now. And the Japanese and the world government said, heck no, we still don't want him alive.
It still is that 1%
so again,
still a threat.
Yes. Now, you've got bigger threats in the world, even in this imaginary world, that are bigger than 1% of Koro Sensei. But they wanted things to go their way. They wanted to stick to the status quo. They didn't want things to change from how they are. They didn't want their positions and the world to be different than what it is. And that's one of the messages in here too, that he's teaching them to make a difference and to change things, and they don't have to be a part of the status quo.
Yeah.
And when he finishes teaching them, you know that each one of them in their own individual way is going to be a benefit to whatever community they're in, the society they're a part of. and their lives are going to turn out the best for them because he's given them, as he says in the book, all the tools necessary to be the best people they can become.
Right.
This book series, this manga series, is absolutely wonderful. If you haven't read it, you are missing out. Don't be thrown off by the plot.
Right. Because
thinking it's something standard and it's just going to be about action and sci-fi. Because yeah, it is. But there's so much more to this book that makes you find it endearing.
Yes,
that's what I said. You just don't want the story to end. My least favorite volume is the last one, and not because it's bad, but because if you've seen the anime,
it's the end.
And it's old, so I'm sure you already know the outcome. Koro Sensei's gone, and you see how each of them turn out, but it's so bittersweet. And it's still sad.
Right.
And you wish that there had been a different outcome.
Right. And on top of that, as the time goes on, they're getting ready to graduate and everything. And at graduation, you see he's done even more outside of what you see in the chapters and the bonus stories. And he's even helped the students reconnect with families, even with Nagisa, put his family back together because you saw how terrible the mom treated him. Help his family get back together. Help them reunite with lost loved ones and reconnect with friends and become better people in society. And it was way more than just in the classroom. He wanted them to be well off even outside of there, to the point where their homes were put back together and their lives were put back together even after he was gone, so that way leaving like a thesaurus full of instructions and tips that's like 1 billion pages long and everything full of crap to tell them, and a guide for literally everything on the planet, so that way they have everything for when he's gone. And it just keeps hitting harder how much he really did care about these students, and it makes you and them miss him more.
The biggest message this manga has, and the final thought, is that anyone can change, because you learn Koro Sensei, which is the name they gave this character, was an assassin prior to this. He was a bad person prior to this.
Right.
And again, the students they were not looked at in the best light, and they thought there was no hope. And by the end of this manga, every single student and Koro Sensei had changed. So the biggest message to take away here is you can always change your situation.
Yes.
With effort and focus, with caring, and people in your life that care about you. Even just one person, anyone can change.
Yes.
And I love it. So if you've read Assassination Classroom, let us know in the comments, when did you read it, when it originally came out, or much later like we did after the anime. If you haven't read it, go get it. It's one of the best reads you'll ever have. And don't let that it's an older manga put you off as well.
Right.
And even if you've seen the anime, don't let that put you off. You really need to read this book and see the extras that you missed.
Right. And one little bonus thing definitely want to mention is that it's also in the same universe as Disaster's Life of Psyche K. Yes. And it's absolutely hilarious because you're wondering, Psyche, why don't you come help him? And if you don't already, subscribe for updates and videos for anime series, anime shows, and all things animation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for subscribing, for joining us on these podcasts, for sharing our podcast. All that helps out our channel so much. We appreciate you very, very much. We love you, and as always,
you are special. Thank you so much for watching Rascal Entertainment.
And Mom Entertainment.
Have a fantastic day.
Peace.
And reporters sitting, flashing lights, trying to walk around, man. Who the hell are you? What you wanna do? Well, man, it's on you. Man, it's on you. Met her in my dreams. She was my queen. A castle in the mountaintops, rivers and streams. Fucking sunlight.